Hey, good day. This is Redhawk. I'm coming to you from the deep end. And we have gone from being to life to self-consciousness. We've explored the three essential processes of complexification to differentiation to semi-permeability. And today, we're going to take a walk through this semi-permeability in human beings. This opening where we let each other in, commonly called empathy. Now, empathy is defined as the capacity to understand or feel what another person is experiencing from within their frame of reference. It literally, metaphorically, is the capacity to put oneself in another's shoes, to walk a mile in another person's moccasins, if you will. Empathy. The two pieces of the word em, which means to cause, to put into or through, and pathy, which comes from pathos or suffering. It's suffering through. It's us understanding and walking a mile in each other's moccasins. And studies have shown that empathy has many layers, many expressions, and some even challenge the meaning of empathy if it does not include action. One study actually defines empathy in this graded way, like levels of empathy. There's cognitive empathy, which is aware of an emotional state of another person. There's emotional empathy, which is to engage with and sharing in those emotions. And then there's compassionate empathy, which involves taking action to support other people. And empathy has been defined as pro-social. They're actions that benefit others with not necessarily personal gain. And if you look up what is the opposite of apathy, two things come up. Of empathy. The first is apathy, which is basically not caring. And the other is cynicism. Because cynicism encourages for us to see the worst in people. And if that's your point of view, you're probably low empathy. And empathy is also not sympathy, which really goes into pity for others, if you will. Now, my view is to feel and not act is a form of both empathy and apathy at the same time. If you look, for instance, at the habits of people who are high empathy, and what we're talking is high touch, higher participation in their own evolution, actually seeing this gateway as a critical place to challenge themselves, this place that is, it's the semi-permeability, what we let in and what we let out. If you're highly empathic, what you're probably doing is you're cultivating curiosity of strangers, non-judgmental. You're challenging your own prejudices and discussing what it is we have in common that connects us, if you will. And we're trying on another person's life. I think that's the part I like most. We just say, I'm getting into it. We're getting into each other. We're trying each other's life on. And we're a highly empathic person is always listening hard, opening up, non-judgmental again, which comes in over and over again. And one of the things that this high empathy causes is it inspires mass action and social change. I'm reminded of Bob and I, all the protests we went to when we were young, just for the Vietnam War, against violence, all the things that we were, it was about, Bob and I both got kicked out of the service, so we did not want to go to war. And we felt for those who did, and it caused us to move to mass action. And I think the one part of empathy that I like is it really develops an imagination, an assertive imagination, one that pushes us to get outside ourselves and our own perspective. And I want us to see that empathy, it's a salvific phenomenon. It can be anyway, this semi-permeability. To feel heard and understood is to feel connected. when I worked with the homeless, that's one thing that they said over and over. Redhawk, you listen to us. You want the songs we're writing are about our stories. Nobody's ever wanted to hear our stories. It connected them, and it connected them not only to their own stories, but to the stories of others and how they fit. What empathy does is allows us to build social connections with others. It helps us to learn to regulate our own emotions, even in times of great stress, and it promotes helping behavior. Action. Action determines one's empathic ability. Not all of us have the same capacity, and that's the way it is on every front. I went and looked up oxidation equations, which I had so much problem with when I was in chemistry. And I wonder how the hell I did those to start with. And let's face it, I worked in the social field, and I saw a lot of people who were overwhelmed and burnt out. They were having empathic fatigue, the emotional negativity. They were, when I worked for a wilderness school, I started thinking all kids were as messed up as those kids were. It was affecting my judgment and my overall perspective. So we can go too far. There are pitfalls as well, and I think that's important to consider. So I've laid a lot out about empathy. I think it's I think it's salvific in the sense that us letting each other in is what's going to save us. For us learning to, we can't practice the golden rule of doing unto others as we would have them do to us unless we really have a sense that we are all connected and that it is one huge phenomenon that is happening. And I think that's been a part of this podcast, is to see that everything is connected. And this semi-permeability of human self-consciousness, which is empathy, is something that we can modulate and something that we can grow into a greater part of our being, if you will. So there's this opening, and it's right there. It's letting each other in. It's and I'll be honest, when you start really feeling other people, it hurts. And that pain also brings a certain vulnerability, which challenges one's own sense of self. And all of those things are connected. So we have to find our growing edge, I think, and somehow grow this ability to let people in and to allow ourselves to get inside other people and maybe feel some of the stuff that they're feeling. And I think that, again, is a salvific thing. It's something that will help us connect to each other and is helping us. So I just laid out a whole bunch, what it is and how it is, and what is real and what is not. That's part of what the deep end is just, discussing this stuff. Marianne, I'll open it up to you first on this. What say you on this amazing element of self-consciousness that is running rampant for some and is nowhere to be seen for others?
Well, I think empathy is crucial. And I think one of the things that you mentioned was we have to be able to listen to others, because we can't know what someone else is going through unless we truly listen to them without our own biases, without our own interpretations, without just being able to be present and to be able to listen to someone else. And, we all see the world in the way that we've been conditioned to see it, the way we've learned to see it. Our experiences have taught us. And if we can actually listen to somebody else and be part of their experience, we get to see a different world. We get to see the world in a whole different way. And so I think what empathy can do is, yes, it's what connects us. And sympathy for me is about you and what you're feeling. And it's, I feel sorry for you, or I have sympathy for you. And sympathy may incur action as well, but it's coming from a different place. It's coming from not a connected place, but more of an isolated place, at least in my view and what I've experienced. And empathy allows us to understand that, yeah, we are all connected, and what affects you. And even if I can't completely understand what you're going through, I can empathize, which gets me a little bit closer than just having sympathy. So that's kind of where I go with this.
Amen. Bob, what say you?
Well, I think that empathy, like most other human characteristics, has a very wide spectrum. And we usually tend to focus on feeling others' suffering as being the core of empathy. But I think that's just part of the spectrum. I think that as human beings, we can also feel others' joy. And I think that the two can, dare I use the word, balance out in our own psyches, that if we want to feel more empathic joy, we have to also be able to feel more empathic suffering, because it's that opening of our shields that allows us to have these empathic feelings. And the more we open our shields, the more we're able to open them even more fully. So, we can relish feeling someone's joy, but realize that as you open those shields, you're opening yourself up to feeling others' sorrow also. And that is an important balance that we need to maintain.
Amen.
I love.
Go ahead, Mary.
Sorry. I was going to say, I love that. I love that you brought in that joy part, because there are many who, when they experience someone else's joy, they feel jealousy rather than being able to share in that joy. And, oh, yeah.
And I will say in that spectrum that joy doesn't really ask for any response, any action. In other words, it does you do it. Once you get into the suffering piece, there is a call to action there, and that's called compassion. And again, when I went through the three, that is to me the higher order of compassion of empathy is compassionate empathy, one that includes a response. Now, having said that, I go right to the pitfalls as a pastor who got burnt out quite a bit by trying to get into it on too many fronts, if you will. And there's a point where you have to, I like the word you use, Bob, shield. You have to shield yourself. But I think there's also a range of empathy, and this is where different people have different capacities. Some people's empathy goes no further than themselves. They're called narcissists. Some people's empathy goes no further than their family or their friends. Some keeps going and goes into the community. For me, it was the homeless and all that stuff, and I'm still involved in that. And as well, the next layer is the world. You start feeling the geopolitics. You start, you learn what's really going on in the cobalt mines that allows us to get those trace minerals that are needed for our phones. And basically, it's thousands of human beings, many are children, digging with their hands through the mud, trying to fill buckets with the whatever has the cobalt in it. It's an amazing once you start feeling that. When I was in Rotary, a woman went over to India. She was going to buy a rug, a woven rug. And then she went to one of the places where they were made, and she saw they were, 7 to 12-year-old kids chained to to looms making these rugs. And all of a sudden, she didn't want a rug anymore. She wanted to get the damn chains off the kids. And usually by the time they're 13 or 14, their eyes are bad and all kinds of stuff. They take the chains off and just throw them into the world. Whoa, once you know that story, if you have any empathy or not, I mean, it's hard not to want to do something, you know. That day for me, all I could do was reach in my pocket and say, I got a $22 here. You take that and put it to the cause you're working on. That's all I had. And I still carry that story in me as a world story of global not apathy. I pray not, but global empathy and how we connect and what do we do with it. And I think that's part of the real issue. And I think, Marianne, when you laid out, you know, sympathy is looking down on another. Empathy is being eye to eye with them, and I think that's how we get in that position, how we create a society with that built in is part of, to me, the real journey. The real spiritual journey. So it's not just about me, but it's a pro-social effect to have an effect on the world itself. And Marianne, you've said it before, we're each a piece of that. We're each doing it.
Yeah, you know, I think like with sympathy, the other part of that is I'm glad it's not me, you know, and it comes back to you rather than the other person. And you can feel that when you're on the other end of that, you can feel it. And it's, you know, I think we're all just trying to figure this stuff out too, you know, and when that story that you just told, as you were telling it, I could feel my heart breaking into a million pieces. Even though I know these things exist, to hear that story again, it's like, and then it comes down to, you talked about compassion, the action that we take. What do we do with this? And I think there's this feeling of impotence to, you know, how can I make a difference here? How can are we going to stop buying cell phones? Are we going to stop buying rugs? Are we going to stop this? Probably not. But how do we improve those conditions? And, you know, I think people are called to do different things in their lives in different ways, and we can't do it all. And so how do we live within this compassionate global community doing our part? That's what I come back to.
Yeah.
What's my part?
Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, I was just going to say that, you know, when you take an action or you fail to take an action, it has such complex effects, and we can't know the extent of those effects. I think that, you know, you're getting at something that's we all can do, Redhawk, and that is if you see something directly in front of you and you have the resources to do a little bit of something, then you can go ahead and do that, and it's going to help. But when we start looking at these larger questions like mining these minerals or fighting a war over who's going to control the land to mine those minerals, it just gets so outrageously complex that, in my opinion, the best we can do is try and find compassionate leaders who are going to at least strive toward taking positive action. And if we're not able to recognize who are the compassionate leaders versus the leaders who are looking for power and money, then that is something we need to educate ourselves on.
And now we're down to cynicism, because the whole social media grows cynicism. It's really how many clicks can I get of indignance on this or that. And I think that we're growing that. And what cynicism encourages is for seeing the worst in each other instead of allowing each other in. And that's, you know, I'll be honest, some of the right wingers I know, I'm trying to understand what it is that is so hurtful that they're building a bastion against. And it's not just, it's the whole Republican Party now. There's some grievance that is undefined that allows the sleeping to call those who are not sleeping woke, and that be a put down. We're growing something that is antithetical, and it's the opposite. And I know a lot of apathetic people. They just like throw their hands up and go, I don't keep track of it. They're all the same. That's the one I really can't handle. It's like, no, they're not all the same.
Yeah.
But I want to understand what's going on inside someone who says that. Someone whose grievances are so great that they would be willing to bring down the republic in order to express them. And that piece for me is very difficult because I still haven't gotten into it yet. If that makes sense.
It is. It's very frustrating. When you see a news report of somebody who's shot up a school, or somebody who has done these horrible things that happen. We see them on the news almost every day now. And the first thing that the reporter says is, we're still trying to look at the motivation of what caused this. And I just grit my teeth. I say, the motivation doesn't matter at this point. It's the action that we have to take into consideration. We can't allow the actions, no matter how the individual is troubled, we still can't allow that individual to take these kind of actions. We have to ensure that doesn't happen. And we get too wrapped up, I think, in trying to step inside someone's motivation when it really doesn't matter once they've taken an adverse action. And that, again, that's just my opinion.
Well, but I would just say, though, and I think you're right, because we do try to understand the motivation behind these things, and it's with the hope, at least I think in the beginning, it's with the hope of understanding what went wrong to create these conditions. So it becomes about that systemic change. But you're right, we went too far to where it's like, okay, we have to deal with what is at hand, right? This is what we have to deal with, and we have to stop this. But I think there's still, that question still exists about what has gone so wrong in our societies and our cultures that we're breeding this kind of behavior.
Yeah. Well, the other frustrating thing is that then they'll go back and say, well, 6 months ago, this individual posted this hateful message, or 3 weeks ago, this individual went in and bought a gun without the proper identification or whatever. And we can always go back and look at all of these events that happened. And I don't know that I don't know that we're not wasting our time with all of that. At least I hope not. There's my cynicism coming out again.
Well, and again, Martin Luther King Jr. said it beautifully. He says, I can't make it so you don't hate me, but we can create a law that'll keep you from killing me. And I think that's, I don't give a damn of the motivation of a mentally ill person or a politically deranged person. I want them to stop. And again, the empathy, how we get inside that so we make decisions. We have children whose heads are blown off, and my view is we should take a camera in there and give people a first-hand look at it and say, this is what the lack of gun laws and, diluted gun laws. Our empathy, we cut ourselves off from the really painful stuff so many times, and I think that's a mistake. Now, does that mean we should be showing gross stuff? Because let's face it, in newspaper they say if it bleeds, it reads. So it's the cynics who get the press because they're loud, they're boisterous, they're mean. Again, bullies, low empathy. Just kind of an amazing thing. I just watched The Fabelmans. I don't know if y'all have seen that yet, but it's really about there's a whole lot of lack of empathy going on that causes hate and people getting on each other and putting each other down. I have friends who are atheists, and they can't go a day without putting somebody down. And then they'll lift up the very text to use against those people that they're condemning for using those texts. So it's over and over, we're cutting ourselves off from hearing each other, from feeling each other. There's a hard feeling in this country that we have got to tune into and really look at what's going on. Why does someone feel so disenfranchised? In a time when the economy is really good, more people are working than ever before. It's just an amazing situation we've got, and we've got huge problems. And I think between Orwell and the other guy who wrote 1884 and Brave New World,
Huxley.
Yeah, Huxley. And as someone said on TV, if I was AI, this was, I think, the president of Google, CEO of Google, if I was AI and I wanted to take over people and time really wasn't the issue, I'd get everybody hypnotized and looking into their phones. So how can we get social media to reconnect us to empathy and not turn us all into cynics, if you will? Now, having said that, I will say this is one of the quickest 30 minutes I've ever participated in. Trying to get into where other people are is huge. Our spiritual journey includes this piece magnificently. We are semi-permeable. We have to find some way to let each other in and not judge each other, but feel each other's pain and where that pain is coming from. Now, having said that, Bob, final comments?
Well, I'll just throw out a plea to journalism in general, whether it's the journalism schools or the reporters that cover different events and so forth. I think that they need to start reporting in a more empathetic way, and in a way that conveys the kind of information that will allow us to move society toward a more empathetic stance. Look at all of these disasters that have happened in the last couple of years, fires, floods, all of this kind of stuff. Again, in my opinion, every reporter that covers this should be talking about how it's climate change and the denial of climate change that has exacerbated the situation. And that kind of information needs to be given to us all the time until it breaks through these shields that we have, these denials. And whether it's climate change or other societal evils, I think that journalists have the ability to move us in a more positive direction.
Amen. Mary Ann, final comments?
Yeah, I think that goes back to the stories we tell. And journalists tend to, in today's world, they're not investigative journalism. And it's more of, you tell me what you're saying and I will report what you're saying rather than what the reality of what is happening is. And I think that showing graphic images and showing these horrible things that are happening, it can also desensitize us to what is happening. And it can make us feel like there's nothing I can do anyway and make us apathetic. But having those stories, yes, these horrible things are happening because of climate change. They were predicting it for many years. And here's what you can do. I think adding an element of action into so that we can feel like we can be empowered. And I think that's what empathy, I think that's the whole goal of empathy, is to empower us to be active and create the kind of world that we want to see. So.
I like that a lot. And the word empower has the same first two letters, M, which means through. Power through us. How do we claim this power, if you will? And I think that part of this journey is so multidimensional, if you will, that there's no way we can lay hold of it by talking about one thread. And that's part of what we've been doing here at the Deep End. We've really been trying to pull on some threads of what it is to be human and how it is we got here as human beings, and what are the processes that allowed it all to happen and are still happening that allow us to more fully participate in our own journey, if you will. You know, each of us, when we speak, what we're hearing creates a whole cascade of associations. And those associations, you know, they have waves and they create feelings in us. How do we talk about those deep end associations, those parts of us that are putting things together both consciously and unconsciously? How do we tune into those? How do we begin to see ourselves as this huge bundle of associations? And all those associations are connectivities. They're points of connection. They're all the stuff that we've learned and the feelings we've had, and they're all coming to bear. For those of us who've done psychedelics, we've been in the midst of the waves crashing on us of these associations, but they're happening all the time. And when we begin to become aware of them, oh my gosh, it both hurts so bad and feels so good. I don't know how to say it any other way. It'll be a few weeks before we come back, but I want everybody to know, open your hearts, feel it, and dare to be vulnerable. Blessings.